Back when I was training at Pittman's gym in Oakland, there was always a group of old men sitting around the ring in metal folding chairs, talking mess to each other. And I'd eavesdrop a lot on their conversations. This was in the late 1980s, and for some reason, Sugar Ray Leonard was universally hated by the senior citizen group. I really don't know why, but their conversations got interesting when they stopped ragging on Leonard long enough to talk about fighters that I'd never heard of at the time. They'd go into the minutia of, who was the greatest defensive fighter they'd seen, mentioning guys like Gypsy Joe Harris, Charlie Shipes, and Holly Mims. And when it came to the best offensive fighters, the name of Jimmy Lester came up. And I think Jimmy came into the gym himself on occasion. There was a guy that would be leaving when the rest of the regulars were coming in the late afternoon. He looked just like Lester. I can't say for sure it was him, but I always thought it was him. And but I can't be sure. This was over 35 years ago. But yeah, Lester fought a lot here in Oakland in the mid to late 1960s. My father told me that he saw him fight live numerous times, and that he was one of the most exciting fighters that ever came out of the San Francisco Bay Area. Jimmy Lester came from a boxing family. His father fought under the name of Vern Lester and Jimmy Top Row Allen. He was nicknamed Top Row because even folks in the top row could hear the impact of his punches. Jimmy's father held the California welterweight title at various times during the 1940s in a career that saw him meet both Sugar Ray Robinson and Jake LaMotta. Top Row began teaching his son to box at the age of 7. Young Jimmy was wild and belligerent as a teenager and was sent to a detention home before turning to professional boxing at age 17, determined to defeat the poverty in his life by physical force. "I lied about my age at the start," Lester said. "You had to be 18 to get a license. They caught up with me, but by that time I was 15-0, so they just told me not to do anything like that again." Lester also played football at Mission High School, but transferred out when they found out he was boxing professionally. He then played at McClymonds High in Oakland, making all-league as a running back. But boxing was his calling, and his left hook was his specialty. He came under the managerial guidance of restaurateur Bill Sanford, who made him an attraction at the Kezar Pavilion in San Francisco. Lester worked as a dishwasher in Sanford's restaurant and boxed on the weekends. With his father working his corner, Lester built up his record to 16-1 before taking on veteran contender Florentino Fernandez. Fernandez was a murderous puncher who'd given middleweight champion Gene Fulmer all they can handle, and he knocked out future light heavyweight champion Jose Torres. Local sports writers predicted that Lester may not be ready for the likes of Fernandez, but Lester knocked Fernandez unconscious in 2 rounds, breaking his jaw, and he was now seen as San Francisco's boxing messiah.
You handled Florentino Fernandez in that last fight almost like he was on the way up instead of one of the top fighters in the country. You think this might give you a little too much confidence?
No, because what happened in the Florentino Fernandez fight, I just considered it just in the past, and it was just one of those opportunities where it presented itself that it was fortunate for me to win. I would think I was just maybe in a little better condition, or I don't know what the real reason was, but now it's over, and I don't forgot about it.
Jimmy, you're ranked number 5 among the world's middleweights now. Aren't you a little bit concerned about giving some of these unknowns a shot at that position?
Well, in a way, yes, then in a way, no. Now, meaning that I've been off 4 months, like you just said, and I need to work pretty bad. Then after I can get 3 or 4 good fights under my belt, then I think I'll be qualified to fight another ranking contender.
What do you think, a little bit later on this year?
Yes, I hope so, at least 3 or 4 months from now.
How about Fulmer? Is he the one you'd like to get next?
Well, I definitely would like to fight Don, because I've been after him all over a year now. And I hope that if I'm really successful in winning this one and 2 or 3 good ones, then I hope that he might give me a shot.
His father died of leukemia in 1965, but Lester's career continued to rise. "My old man told me, 'Son, every round is the first round,'" Lester said. "And I fought like that. I always came out for the 8th, the 9th, even stronger." The other guy, he couldn't believe it.
Do you go into a fight with a pre-fight plan, or do you pretty much take it as it comes up?
From the past experience of fighting experienced fighters, I like to take it as it comes up according to goes on each round, you see, because sometimes with a pre-fight plan, things change, and you have your mind just on what you had in mind of doing, and sometimes you've been in a bad situation. So I just like to judge as the fight goes on.
Well, if you do get him one, you're just going to go after him whenever it happens to be.
Right. Matter of fact, out of all of my fights, I've had 24 knockouts, and believe me, I've never tried to knock out an opponent. I never have tried this. This has always been accidents. And really, I just try to do whatever comes natural. And unfortunately, if I be fortunate enough to knock him out, then I will. If not, then I'll be just happy to walk away with a decision.
By May of 1966, Lester was the number 2 ranked middleweight in the world. Promoter Don Shargan lobbied for Lester to get a title shot against Emil Griffith.
Now, what about this upcoming Griffith-Archer title fight? Are you looking at that one pretty closely?
Actually, I am, because there's a possibility that I might get a shot at Griffin. You know, Griffin promised me once before that he would fight me if I beat Fernandez. Well, unfortunately, I broke my hand, and I haven't heard anything from him since.
You broke the jaw, too, didn't you? Somebody else's?
Yeah. So, actually, now I'm quite sure he have heard about me again since that. So now, if he feels that we can also draw a suitable amount of money, there's a possibility that he might give me a shot. Yeah, well, I picked Griffin for a decision. I picked Dick Tiger for a KO.
You think if they fight again, that it'll be the other way around?
No, I think it might be the same way. I'm pretty sure Griffin has outspeed him again. Now, unless Tiger happen to catch up with him.
How do you feel your style would go? You're a pretty exciting boxer, Jimmy. Would be against a fellow, a welterweight like Griffin.
Like Griffin? Well, I believe it'd be something to see. I'm quite sure I would cut him off and stay on top of him and slow him down to the body. Then have him to stand toe-to-toe and fight my kind of fight. I wouldn't try to box him.
Well, Jimmy, good luck to you, and we know if anybody's a champion, you are, and you'll have that championship.
Well, I hope so, Ed, if you only give me the chance.
The hype machine began as his sparring partner, Bobo Olsen, called him the best 160-pound prospect he had ever had the pleasure of laying eyes on. A San Francisco sports writer stated that Lester should possess the world record for knocking out opponents for the longest duration. A Lester left hook left Cruz Barajas flat on his back for 10 minutes. A Lester right uppercut had Hurricane Kid out for 12 minutes. And Florentino Fernandez was knocked unconscious for 5 minutes before waking up with a broken jaw. But Lester could not transfer his winning ways outside of California. He traveled to Honolulu and was stopped in 5 rounds by Stan Harrington. Returning home, he fought tooth and nail with Andy Heilman, only to lose a decision, and that fight was considered one of the greatest battles in the history of Bay Area boxing. A poet named Tom Smario immortalized it with a poem he called Fight of the Year. An excerpt reads, "Both men became demented with the orgasmic intensity of the moment. Scuffles broke out in the crowd. The entire place became one big fight. Everybody hit somebody and some people slugged themselves. Heilman threw punches like a claustrophobic madman with a baseball bat. Lester fought like Lester was, a man swinging an axe in wide arcs and roundhouses that tear meat from the bone." A decision loss to Carl Moore followed before Lester took on his former sparring partner and good friend, Charlie Shipes. Shipes floored Lester in the 3rd round, but the bout was scored a draw. In November of 1967, Lester once again ventured out of California, this time traveling to Philadelphia to take on fellow middleweight contender Benny Briscoe. Briscoe's left exploded in Lester's tummy like a mortar shell, Tom Cushman wrote, and the agony set in, and Lester bent over like he had forgotten to tie a shoelace and his eyes glazed with shock. 5 rounds later, the referee halted the fight. "He was a strong boy," Briscoe said, "took some nice shots, but he wasn't as tough as he said he was." In March of 1968, Lester took on welterweight champion Curtis Coates in a non-title match.
No, I only read about him. I know he was a highly ranked middleweight just a year or so ago. I know he's a real good fighter, and I think I like to fight real good fighters.
Who are the really tough guys in the welterweight division?
Well, right now we have Willie Ludick, the guy that I'm defending against next month. And then you have Charlie Shipes, Luis Rodriguez, Gypsy Joe Harris. In fact, all the guys are tough. They're good fighters.
All right, Curtis, I want to find out what your opponent thinks about this whole thing. Jimmy, I suppose you'd like nothing better than to suddenly become a hero by decking this guy.
Right. I mean, that would establish me a great deal for the middleweight championship fight. You know, either I like to fight Emil Griffin or either one of the two, but still, if I can beat the welterweight champion, then that shows I'm qualified to fight another champion in my division.
To beat a guy like this, you've got to get yourself in shape. Have you been working hard?
But I've been working hard as far as I know of now. I've been dedicated to it, and I've been training religiously, and I really have been dedicating myself to my job. That's to try to get in the best shape that is possible.
Did you see Cokes fight Shipes?
Yes, I've seen him fight. Matter of fact, I was sitting right there ringside, and I didn't miss a punch that he thrown.
The welterweight champion Cokes floored Lester and won a unanimous decision. "I'll admit this had to be my toughest fight," Cokes said after. "Lester never lets you loaf. He's the busiest guy I've fought." In September of 1968, Lester engaged in a crowd-pleasing brawl against Rocky Hernandez. Local writer Eddie Muller stated that anyone who saw the fight will remember the raw courage and toe-to-toe fighting. Comparing the bout to Zale and Graziano, Muller described how both fighters teed off on each other for all 10 rounds, a seesaw battle that saw Lester finally win by knockout in the 10th. The audience then threw coins into the ring to show their appreciation. Shortly after, Lester ditched his original manager Sanford in favor of Leo Levitt. But by 1970, after 7 years in the sport, Lester's body couldn't take it anymore. He won only one fight of his final 13. Then tragedy struck as his manager, Leo Levitt, collapsed right as Lester was entering the ring against Denny Moyer. Lester couldn't focus, lost the fight, and later collapsed when told that his manager had died, as he saw him as a father figure. After his career ended, he did a variety of jobs, one of which was being a truant officer who had to intervene during a savage beatdown of a student. It was a gang of black kids, about 200 of them, and at least 60 were stomping and clubbing this white kid, Lester said. "I jumped into the crowd and said, 'If you hit him, you're going to have to hit me first.' I sure was hoping they wouldn't call my bluff. They didn't. I took the kid to the hospital. He was really beat up."
I'm interested in juvenile work because I once was juvenile, and I'm not ashamed to admit, and I won't deny that I was in trouble once before myself. I wasn't in no serious trouble, just no miscellaneous things. And I've seen so many kids actually misled, hurt, their careers, they're ruined. One of the careers they had, like in football, their scholarships gone down the drain. And I mean, I do this from my heart because I want to see these youngsters grow with something in life, a bright future, and they do have it, and that's why I do it.
Leaving the school department, Lester wanted to work in law enforcement. He was one of the first class of transit police officers hired to protect riders on the San Francisco Muni system before going to work for the housing authority. But by 1982, he was living on welfare in a hotel. He lived with his family in a room with no heat, and his story was featured in what became the heatless hotel scandal in San Francisco. Lester lived out his final days in an apartment in San Francisco's Tenderloin. He suffered a stroke in 1997, which affected his memory, speech, and paralyzed his once powerful right arm. His health deteriorated, and he lived out his final year at Laguna Honda Hospital before dying of a heart attack on September 9, 2006. He was 61 years old. But Lester never complained about his fate, remaining a cheerful interview whenever a local sports reporter checked up on him. "I had a lot of hard fights," Lester said. "They were fun. I just loved hard fights. I wish I were 21 years old again so I could do it all over."